Whether you drive or take public transit, those hours spent on your way to work don't have to be a bore. Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today, we're counting down our picks for the top 10 podcasts to instantly improve your commute. For this list, we're looking at the most interesting and engaging podcasts that will keep you occupied while you're on your way to work or school. Number 10, Reply All. Produced by Gimlet Media, this weekly podcast is frequently referred to as a show about the internet. While the show does cover themes of technology, in reality, its stories are all about humanity.
This stupid little piece of entertainment is maybe telling us, even in the smallest way, something about being a human being.
Hosts PJ Voigt and Alex Goldman previously worked on another podcast together, TLDR, which focused on similar ideas.
I got someone on the phone who was trying to sell me tech support, telling me that my iCloud had been compromised, that my computer was being looked at, my bank account was being looked at. And I knew right away that it wasn't true, but I was curious just how far I could get this person to go in terms of admitting what their business model is and sort of keeping them on the line.
Each episode is perfectly bite-sized at about 20 minutes and varies greatly in terms of what type of tale will be told, so it's sure to keep you interested for hours on end. Number 9, Song Exploder. If you're a serious audiophile, then this one is for you. In this podcast, creator and host Rishikesh Hirway interviews musicians and songwriters about the creative decisions they make in the making of their track.
Very rarely a chance to actually get a show and tell experience of I'm talking about this sound, and then you get to hear that sound.
He removes his part of the interview in the editing process, so the final product just sounds like the musician talking about their craft.
And so we were kind of jamming on these two riffs, and it just felt like there was kind of the cornerstone of a Metallica song.
They've hosted guests as varied as Metallica, Grimes, Weezer, U2, and Death Cab for Cutie. If you ever want to hear the origin stories behind your favorite songs, make sure to subscribe to Song Exploder.
This one's easy. He's got the freak lips. He can hit the high C all night long. He was king of the tuk-tuk sound.
Is this another jazz guy?
Number 8, Freakonomics. You probably remember the runway hit nonfiction book Freakonomics that was released in 2005. But did you know that the authors have translated their ideas into a podcast? Whether you read the book or not, there's something for everyone in this informative pop science audio publication. Fans of Malcolm Gladwell's books will also likely enjoy this listening experience.
You may be saying to yourself, Michael Joyner sounds credible, and he's got great credentials. But we also know he's a bit of an exercise fanatic himself, so how can we be sure that it's exercise that's actually causing better health outcomes?
Co-author Stephen Dubner now discusses human nature and interesting psychological phenomena with a variety of experts, including co-author, co-creator, and regular guest Stephen Levitt.
When you're in a job, a relationship, a project, there's a thing called the sunk cost fallacy, where you put a lot into something and you think, well, I have to keep going.
The weekly podcast runs for approximately half an hour, the perfect length for your commute. Number 7, 99% Invisible. Have you ever wondered about the psychology behind fountains in parks, or wondered why those wacky inflatable tube men are always stationed outside car dealerships? Probably not. But the creators of 99% Invisible are there to look into it for you anyway. This show takes a deep dive into the architecture of our world, and the work that goes into the design decisions that may seem trivial to the untrained eye.
Now, most people find the screeching and skronking of broken escalators really quite annoying, but once you accept that it is not going to change, and trust me, in the DC metro system, it is never going to change, you can find pleasure in the accidental music of imperfect escalators.
Creator Roman Mars wraps his head around things that you wouldn't even know needed figuring out, and the result is deeply absorbing.
Sometimes one invention needs another to unlock its full potential. For the aviation industry, that story starts with the development of the death ray.
Number 6, Radiolab. One of the longer-running programs on our list, this radio show has been around since way before podcasts were popular, first airing in 2002. What makes Radiolab stand out is their more refined documentary-style production, which uses sound and music differently than most of the other entries we're talking about today.
In hockey terms,
this guy is a predator.
John Scott was what you would call an old-fashioned goon.
Luckily, if you get hooked on this one, there are years worth of back catalog of episodes for you to enjoy. The high-quality investigative journalism displayed in this show cannot be beat, and you'll find yourself wanting to share the incredible stories you hear with all your friends.
This particular fateful day was no different than any of millions and millions of previous days as far as the dinosaurs were concerned. But if there were any astronomers at the time, which there weren't, they might have had some inkling that something was coming, because
had they looked up,
they would have seen
a tiny little
dot of light in the sky.
Number 5. Fresh air. National Public Radio, more commonly known as NPR, has been producing incredible radio content for decades, and this podcast is no exception. The show actually started over 40 years ago, in 1975, when it was hosted by Judy Blank. That same year, Terry Gross took over as the head presenter, and still acts as such as of 2019.
Hitman's like dog catcher. There's more in television and movies than there are in real life, There's not Hitman, what is that, I go, but what if it was me, and it's not a guy, it's not, the kind of cool guy with two guns in his hands with the long tie. Like, what if we, the black tie and the suit, what if we made it real?
Gross interviews visionaries from different fields in the arts, science, and entertainment. Some of the most famous interviews are with Johnny Cash, Chris Rock, Maurice Sendak, Meryl Streep, John Oliver, Stephen King, and David Foster Wallace.
Most famously, Bill O'Reilly walked out on me. He accused me, I asked him a few challenging questions about whether he used the microphone to settle scores or to get even with people.
These interviews go in depth and reveal sides of the famous subjects you wouldn't otherwise see.
He said, if you think that's fair, Terry, you should get out of this business. And I'm thinking, one of us still has a program.
Number 4. Pop Culture Happy Hour. If you love being kept up to date on the latest in TV and movies, then this podcast hosted by Linda Holmes is for you. NPR's rotating panel of entertainment experts chat about the newest hit TV shows and blockbusters, as well as lesser-known indie flicks.
And to see these two megawatt stars believably portraying this warm friendship, and this one wherein there is a hierarchy, and Cliff, the Brad Pitt character, seems to be perfectly comfortable being subservient to Rick, played by Leonardo DiCaprio.
They also cover books, music, comic books, and whatever else they're into that week. You'll come to relate to the show's regulars like Glenn Weldon and Stephen Thompson, and your to-watch list will expand exponentially with every listen.
There's a moment where his voice cracks, and I wanted to feel that. I wanted to feel as though Mufasa dying was the first time I'd seen it.
Right.
And I didn't, because while that was happening, Simba's face was just dead. So
cat face.
If you want something slightly more educational from NPR, try out Planet Money, which illuminates issues in the financial world. Number 3, Serial. Arguably the podcast that made podcasts cool, Serial stands alone in terms of how engaging, enthralling, and absorbing it is.
From This American Life and WBEZ Chicago, it's Serial, one story told week by week. I'm Sarah Koenig.
The first season of Serial looks at a 1997 murder case in which high school student Adnan Syed was accused of killing his ex-girlfriend. Host Sarah Koenig reopens the mystery of Hae Min Lee's death and makes you seriously question the criminal justice system.
The setup for this crime that the state laid out was that Adnan was betraying everything he held dear for this girl. As a good Muslim, he was not supposed to be dating, and so he was sacrificing his religion and lying to his family, all just so he could be with her. And it twisted him up inside.
While this is great for a commute, you may even want to save it for a long road trip, because you will not be able to stop after just one episode. Number 2, Idiot with Chris Hardwick. If you love celebrities, you'll undoubtedly fall head over heels for this podcast. Formerly known as The Nerdist, host Chris Hardwick interviews comedians, actors, and other members of the entertainment industry about what it means to be a nerd. The interviews are lighthearted and comedic, and give you an inside look at the craft behind your favorite movies and TV shows. Though it would evolve from a single show to an entire podcast network, which included news, reviews, and videos, Hardwick and the podcast would later leave Nerdist Podcast Network. According to its official website, This new iteration is the same as before, except that it allows listeners to unfurl their rage not only in the reviews section, but also now on all the various social media platforms that have popped up since they started in 2010.
It's almost like I had a little guy inside of me who was like David, who was suffering this thing, and I used this artistic opportunity to believe him and to listen.
That's what made him so real, because you're rooting it in these actually authentic, horrible things that you're feeling, and that's what people are. People can read that, and in the process of feeling empathy and understanding Hopper.
Before we unveil our number one pick, here are some honorable mentions.
Our dad drinks hot Dr. Pepper when he's sick.
And he's
you
a
ever
monster.
heard of such a terrible thing?
Yes.
Guys.
He's a monster.
I developed a couple of key products that are not your typical merchant. That's why we call them alternative.
Merch.
Right.
Okay.
So I brought you something. I don't know. You can use it if you want, or we could talk about it. I figured since we're on video, you'd see it. It's a John End whistle, and it's a train whistle. As you can see, John's a bass player.
I'm Matthew.
I'm Molly.
And this is Spilled Milk, the show where we cook something delicious, eat it all, and you can't have any.
Almost a mile to the northeast, and at the forest edge, under a large cedar tree, the searchers found the remains of a small fire, and there they also found the first of the two bodies.
It's Blade Runner for dummies. We saw the adventures of Pluto Nash, so you know what that means.
Now it's time for How to Discover.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. This American Life.
Oh, hi. Hi. I'm Ira Glass.
I'm Mary, Ira's friend.
If you're interested in podcasts but don't know where to start, most aficionados would recommend beginning with the renowned and celebrated This American Life.
A memory came back to me from when I was 28 that I'm sure I hadn't thought about since it happened.
She was training to be a psychologist.
It is now both a radio show and a hugely popular podcast, with several million people downloading every episode. Each episode has a theme, and then looks at a handful of stories that relate to it.
And today on our program, we have the more typical thing. We have two stories where people use the wrong word, and there are big consequences. Big, angry, judgy, divisive fights.
Because the show has been airing for years, there's a huge catalog of episodes. So whatever your area of interest, you'll undoubtedly be able to find something that's right up your alley.
Just in case you haven't heard this one, social justice warrior. An insult that can be thrown at anyone who speaks up against racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, all the other isms and phobias.
The thing they do so well, though, is turning a seemingly mundane story into something that you cannot stop listening to. Enjoy! Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.